Welcome to the Business Performance Podcast, where we feature expert thought leaders and cover their best strategies, stories, and advice that you can use to successfully mature your own business performance. Now, here is your host, business coach, Henry Schneider. Hello, everyone. This is Henry Schneider with the Business Performance Podcast, and today it's my pleasure to talk with Kyle Gantos of MeetYourGig and now the Executive Career Accelerator. I've known Kyle for a number of years when he first started his business, and now after 7.5 years, he's grown quite a bit. So, Kyle, could you please describe your company, your customers, and the kinds of products and services you provide?
Yeah, MeetYourGig is an online training/coaching platform that essentially teaches ambitious professionals how to define their value proposition, how to build relationships with influential executives, and then how to discover challenges, opportunities, and deliver solutions. And these skills can be applied to find new and exciting career paths, advance your career, even start your own consulting business. Our core customer tends to be experienced business professionals, anywhere from 10 to 30 years of experience, who are looking for more than just a paycheck, and perhaps have tried and struggle a little bit with traditional methods, or just want to maximize their options. And so we give them training, online coaching resources, and try to teach difference makers how to be able to market themselves and think a little bit more like entrepreneurs to create target opportunities.
Okay, so basically then what you have from your perspective, you have some online training, and you've got, I remember you had like a library of templates and everything there. So how do you do the coaching?
Yeah, so the first installation of the coaching is creating those resources you mentioned. And that is just understanding your customer, what their current challenge is, and then maybe creating some content to give more of a simple playbook that accelerates their learning curve, and it gives them enough information to go out and actually experience things in the real world, engaging real business leaders. And the coaching takes place once they've had those experiences, and then we talk about it. How many meetings did you have this week? How many interviews did you have this week? What did you learn? What did you talk about? How long did the meeting last? What do you think you should do next versus, well, maybe have you considered it from this perspective? Maybe you don't have enough information, but by asking a few questions, you can continue that conversation. So the majority of the coaching takes place via live group sessions. Could be myself and a couple clients, could be myself and 20 or 30 clients. And that group format actually provides some benefits to create accountability and transparency between myself and each respective client, but then you also get knowledge sharing between the clients. And so it creates a community, if you will. And I think that's kind of the glue that holds it together.
Yeah. Yeah, that almost sounds like what happens with these mastermind groups too.
Well, I would, there's a lot of just the amount of knowledge that's exchanged. And I think as someone who started my career in customer service, you know, an overlooked position, oftentimes the customer calling in and complaining, you knew where the holes were in the business. And so when you have this kind of relationship with your clients, it allows you to see what you can do to improve your service. And so I don't know if I'm a mastermind, but I've got a good process.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to ask you about quality from two different perspectives. So what is the importance of quality of the training that you created and the assets that you created to be able to, for your clients to use?
Quality is everything to me. I think when it comes to, so there's training and coaching. To me, training, quality there is simplicity. Can you transfer the basic concepts to get people enough information to understand it and feel like they can go execute it quickly? The coaching quality is a byproduct of their ability to take that training and go execute it. So again, they have to understand it. They have to go execute it. And then what that allows them to do is get real world experiences that they can measure. And when you can measure something, when you can quickly go do it, regardless of whether it goes beautifully or whether there's some stumbling or some accidents or whatever, that experience then allows them to gain confidence, because whatever it is, there's either something to learn or something to reinforce, and then another kind of cumulative perspective that can be acquired, and that's how you facilitate growth. So that the coaching quality then becomes about listening, asking questions, getting them to, I would say that probably 90% of the coaching experience is contingent upon me asking questions to get information that my clients either are taking for granted or maybe are uncomfortable sharing. And so just asking those additional questions to probe a little bit deeper, there may be something incredibly simple that this really intelligent, super accomplished person is taking for granted. And quality in coaching is that. And you have to have some accountability and be able to push people when they need to be pushed, be able to reinforce what's working, and kind of all that fuses together. And I would say that as long as they're continuing to learn something, that's quality.
Okay.
That's progress.
Okay, so now from looking from their perspective, what's the importance of the quality to your client for the services that you provide to them?
Extraordinarily important. And I think probably the best way to look at that would be when I look at a lot of the customer paths before they get to me. 2/3 of the time they've worked with somebody else in my space, whether it's a resume writer, a LinkedIn optimization expert, a career coach, an outplacement firm, college career services, executive search support. And most of those experiences are what I would consider to be either elementary or mainstream level wisdom that's being shared. And it kind of teaches everybody to think and do the same thing. So quality from my standpoint is teaching people how to think differently, and then give them the tools to be able to create their own results. And there's this big misconception, at least in my space, is that you can just go buy results. And the truth is results got to be earned, and to earn it, you got to learn how to do it. And so I would say I'm in the results business, but it starts with their mindset. If they've got the right mindset and they trust the process, then the quality for them it's outcome driven. I mean, quality means I can measure my value proposition versus my competition and see a gap. I am investing this amount of time and I'm getting this many meetings with decision makers. I'm meeting these decision makers and I'm uncovering things that my competition isn't uncovering, so that I can create opportunities now and in the future. And quality is results. And I would say another thing too, quality is caring. From my standpoint, they got to know that I care about them. They got to know that I understand whatever their challenge is. And then I have to be able to create value for them. And that's essentially the same SOP I try to teach them how to do. And in this world where everything's driven by technology and everything's about speed and efficiency, which are great things, I think actually you can gain a competitive advantage in this world by being a human being again, and actually caring and understanding and solving instead of selling.
Okay. So what's the number one biggest challenge that you're facing with business performance and being able to deliver your services?
Well, in terms of service delivery, biggest challenge is communication. I think my business has barely scratched the surface in terms of, technology can enable so many disruptions that I hope to be able to experience those. But at where the business is in its life cycle today, it's the awareness and communication and comfort level gap to get a challenge or a gap or a mental barrier that may be in a client's head that they cannot articulate, or that maybe they're uncomfortable sharing, or maybe they're just taking it for granted because it's so simple, it's easy to overlook. How do I get access to that data? How do I get it out? How do I get them to share it? How do I create an environment where they're comfortable sharing it? How do I create an environment where they're regularly going to attend the services or the coaching that they've paid for in order to break through and to get to that next level? And for me, it's the environment you create, and then the relationship that's built. And it's how I'm always trying to think, how can I get the person who is moving at a slower pace to make it simpler so they can engage it more and build a little bit more momentum? How can I make it more consistent for them? How can I improve the environment to where people will just show up at least once or twice a week to learn? So it's engagement probably is at least a measurable way for me to measure how much people are getting out of my program. And I'm always looking at, okay, the top 10% are active. They're consistently there each week. They're learning, they're growing faster. How do I get the other 90% to get to the next threshold?
Yeah. So what are some of the common fears about these challenges?
Fears in terms of from my perspective or the customer perspective?
Well, from your perspective, because
Well, my number one fear is, what do I not know?
hmm,
I'm smart enough to know that there's a lot that I don't know. What is it that I don't know that I need to know?
hmm,
And the quicker I can figure that out, that might be the difference between moving at a current trajectory to getting to another trajectory. It's fascinating to me because I've found that those of us who maybe excel in one application of our life, when we have to put a different hat on, the concepts are the same, the strategy is the same, the process is the same, but when it becomes so personal to us, oftentimes we don't see things that we would see if we weren't so close to it.
right.
So that's something that I would say I struggle with, and ironically, it's something that I help my clients escape. So we all need coaches.
Yeah, that's true. I know. So how are you getting past these fears right now?
Active dialogue. I think the glue that holds what I do together right now, the thing that is conceptually not difficult to imitate, but in actual execution is something that I don't know, that the model's very effective if you have somebody who cares, knows, and can solve problems.
Hmm.
And so the just asking questions, asking people to creating a sense of accountability where let's measure what we're doing. Asking the question that maybe they're forgetting to ask themselves. That's my one kind of go-to format where I can get access to that information that's in their brain somewhere.
Hmm.
I can either teach them how to measure it, or I can teach them how to interpret it, or I can teach them what to do with the data that they are interpreting and how to use it better in some form or fashion. So maybe it's old school right now, but just getting on the phone with people and talking and sharing experiences is at least my consistent growth formula.
Okay.
One day I think a lot of this can be automated, and that's the exciting part from a technology standpoint.
So when somebody comes with you that's completely out of the blue, that you're not comfortable with at all, so you're pushing you out of your comfort zone, how do you interact with them? What do you do?
Well, I think a lot of times it's, especially, I don't know if it's a generational thing or if it's just the society thing. I think we all want to believe, or maybe in the moment, I know this, and the perception of me is going to be based on how quickly I can respond to something, or if I sound confident in what I'm saying. And a lot of times, I think the best thing to do is to, that's a new challenge. I have not conquered that one before, but let me make sure I understand it.
Hmm.
And let me make sure I understand. Can I get into your shoes? If I can have some feeling of what it's like to be you and see the world through your eyes, then I think we both benefit from that. Whether that's me with a new prospective client, me with active clients, business partners, anybody. There is no substitute for, do you care? Can
Yeah,
you understand me? And if you got those two things and you're just persistent, you can solve most problems.
sure. Yeah, about being open and transparent and not putting up a facade as an expert, but actually, turning the tables and asking questions. So very good. So is it almost like the Socratic method that you're using by asking questions to draw information out?
Absolutely. I'm very, the 0.0001% of experiences I've had that make me somewhat intelligent and, consistently able to solve problems in one small aspect of life, I've developed a certain level of confidence in that field, and have tested it, reinforced it, and am continuously, gaining some ground or adding to that knowledge base every day on these calls. And by now it's probably about 1,500 hours worth of these group coaching calls. But it's whatever's going to happen tonight or tomorrow night is the solution still requires the same process. So the problems will be new. Actually, the problem may not even be new. It just may be from a new person's perspective.
What, when you're talking to the clients, what are the perceived obstacles that they have that might prevent you from being able to achieve the success you seek?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, that right there is that is the gap, right? That's for me, that's the customer acquisition gap. It's, whether it's their university, whether it's their career path, whether it's their career services department, we've all kind of been conditioned or programmed or taught to approach advancing our career in a certain way. So the assumptions that I need to have somebody write a resume for me, for example, from a marketing standpoint, I'm not a resume writer, but my customer thinks they need a resume writer. I'm not a career coach, but my customer thinks they need a career coach. Or maybe even another good example would be an active client, and it's, hey, I'm going to teach you how to do some things that may be a little bit uncomfortable for you. You may be an introvert, and the thought of reaching out to a stranger and having coffee with them is, I mean, that fear alone may prevent you from even trying something that in a couple days you could prove actually works and get some confidence. So the only solution that I've created is education.
Mm-hmm.
You have to educate people. You can't just skip that part and say, here's what you need to go do. It can be logical. It can be, well laid out. It can be simplified. It can be concise. It can be so powerful, and, the evidence may be there, but until they understand that there's something that they need, or that there's a challenge, you can't get through to them. So the education process becomes so important, and it's kind of, and this is being on the service delivery side and then branching over into the sales side, can be a challenge sometimes, because on half of my life, I'm spending with people who are educated and now they want the solution. The other half of my life, I'm spent with people who think the world works in a certain way, and to even get them to consider that it might work differently, I cannot come at them with my current level of understanding. I have to take a step back and say, okay, what is it? What do you think you need? Okay. And I would say, and oftentimes asking them, what are your goals? You think you need a career coach. You think you need a resume writer. You think you need this. You think you need that. But have you stopped for a second and asked yourself, what are your goals? Like, what do you want to accomplish? Now, how is that piece of paper going to help you accomplish that goal? And then all of a sudden wait, I think I need this, but that's maybe not even half the solution. And then, so it takes time. It takes time. And honestly, I've taken some risks to try to be able to scale my business. And I've failed a few times trying to figure out, how can I shortcut that process? And there's probably somewhere, if here's the spectrum, and I'm right here, very personalized, and I want to get over here. I think probably there's somewhere in here, but I've never had any success going all the way over here. And so it's, I've lost a lot of revenue experimenting with that, but there is no substitute for, again, showing somebody you care, understand, and here's how I can help you help yourself.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I don't know how you'd actually automate what you do, because it's the personal touch and the relationships. And that's what you're trying to train people to do to get it to advance their career. So I don't know how you would automate it.
Well, Henry, it's that's one of the questions that keeps me up at night is how can I do that? And I think certain aspects of it can be automated, but I think at some point there has to be an active educational experience, and
Mhm.
maybe some of that can be, achieved in some sort of training session or webinar in a group format. Maybe certainly it's one-on-one. um, and I do find though that if someone doesn't acknowledge that they can be better, forget the tools and all the possibilities and options to
Mhm.
achieve that. But if someone doesn't want to get better, then there's really not much I can do to educate that person. If they
Right.
want to get better and they admit that, if they can acknowledge they don't know everything, then there's some sort of process, and everybody's a little bit different. But at some point, it's got an education experience has to take
Sure.
place.
It's like they say, you can take a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Absolutely.
So could you share a story of how you helped a specific person to overcome these obstacles and succeed?
Yeah, it's I've, a more recent a gentleman I started working with 3 years ago, reached out recently, and this was towards the beginning of my program. A lot of the training materials had been built; they've since been optimized. But um, his experience with being able to learn how to understand his value, to not look at himself in the mirror and say, well, I've got this title, this many years of experience, I've worked for these recognizable companies, to be able to translate that and go, well, what are you really worth? How do you make money, save time? um, then be able to get that value proposition in front of other business leaders, and then be able to discover challenges, create solutions. So this gentleman enrolled a few years ago, um, secured a target opportunity at the time. And I had, I usually check in with former clients, once a year, some form or fashion, email, message, LinkedIn. Anyway, he reached out to me and he just said, hey, I enrolled in your program 3 years ago. I just want to provide a glimpse of what the training you presented can empower over time, in not just the immediate goal, the job or the consulting gig. And so he said, hey, I've just become CEO of a company. We brought it out of liquidation. For the last couple months, I've been hosting kind of Shark Tank-like investor meetings to raise funds. And over 3 years, I've gone from director of sales to vice president of sales to vice president of sales and marketing to now CEO. And over that time frame, I've doubled my income. So it's, to hear a story like that, that's I mean, that's almost beyond what I could have imagined that I could help with. And I give all credit to him, because he's taken the training and then built a process, and his ambition and everything he's done. But I think the greatest compliment I could get is that somebody learned something
Mhm.
by working with me. It wasn't, here, I paid you $300 and you delivered a piece of paper with some magic words on it. Or, maybe something good happened and I'm going to attribute it to you, even though there's no correlation. But in this case, that's transformational. That's not luck. There was something there. And, um, I mean, at the end of the day, whether I'm looking to break through to the next milestone, or whether I'm just having a bad day and one of my experiments failed, when I get on those calls or when I get a message like that, that just makes me smile.
Sure.
That's why I got into this, to solve something that I thought was broken. And for one other person on the planet to have taken that knowledge and then used it, that means I made a difference. And
Yeah.
and that means he's making a difference, to get other people to believe in him. So I would say that's probably that was a big milestone for me.
Sure. So if you could distill all that down, what would the moral of that story be?
Somebody had ambition. They had all the ability in the world. They just needed a process and a little bit of guidance in order to create the knowledge base and the confidence and then go replicate it themselves. It's I'm not the hero. I shared some of my knowledge with him, and then he takes that and everything that he already was. I think there's so many difference makers out there, and I think all of us, we just want to make a difference. And sometimes the frustration level comes from, hey, I can help people. I want to help people. I want to make a difference, but they don't understand. And so, to break that gap between here's what I'm capable of doing for you, and then give me the chance to go do it for you. And that's a beautiful thing. So
Yep.
that's what it's all about.
Yeah. And just think about it, when you do something bad, people let you know right away. Everybody, but it's rare that once things go well that you hear back. And it's quite a testimonial that he would reach out to you and say, Kyle, thanks, because what you taught me 3 years ago led me to where I am today.
Yeah. And you know what? And that's I think one of the things, I think all of us, you want to work with great people. You want to tackle challenges that you can get excited about. And then whatever it is, whether some sense of appreciation, and oftentimes from ourselves, just to feel like we made an impact.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's core to who I am. I think most people deep down, that's if you have those three things, you're happy.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's just getting out of our own way. And then you can see opportunities that maybe they were right in front of you before, you just didn't see them.
So let's talk about with your clients, what are some of the common pitfalls or mistakes they make that you need to keep in mind so other people don't keep going down that same garden path, making the same mistakes?
Yeah, I mean, assumptions are probably the biggest thing. Assumptions, ego, assuming that everything kind of boils down to assumptions. Either the mindset of, oh, that'll never work. Or the mindset of, well, I tried that once. It wasn't anything like what you're saying, but I had a bad outcome. Therefore, every other time I try it, it won't work.
Mm-hmm.
Or just, again, some form of assumption that, well, I'm a little uncomfortable with doing it that way, so I'm going to do it this way. But those assumptions, there's only two ways to get past it. And then that is for them to test and fail, and then learn from it and realize, okay, well, this was the reason why that failed, or to have a discussion beforehand and say, well, why do you think it needs to work that way? And then, and challenging it to, okay, try it this way. Let's measure it. And then you'll actually have real data to be able to tell the difference. So, I don't know if that answered your question.
Sure. Because I remember when we were engaged many years ago, what you were advocating is, going out and talking to people, having these conversations. And a lot of the other clients you had, they didn't understand that. That's that fear of getting out there, but it actually works.
Yeah. And you just bring up another one, actually. Thank you, Henry. So assumptions and fear. I mean, and really, actually, probably fear is behind the assumption too. It's, our society nowadays is, you said it earlier, when you do good, nobody necessarily says anything, but when you mess up, man, everybody lets you have it. And you don't want to feel that embarrassment. You don't want to feel that rejection. And I would say that whether it's entrepreneurs that I'm coaching, or whether it's my clients that I'm coaching, man, 99% of the time, whatever your fear is never even going to happen. It's never even going to happen. But by choosing not to try, you guarantee that you'll never find out. So if you can break through that, and again, education, it's, that it's easy to tell people what they want to hear.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes the way to get through, and you have to be tactful. And sometimes I've been a little, I can be very honest and direct and candid, because I don't understand why waste time over things that don't matter. But sometimes people just need a little bit of encouragement. Sometimes they need a little bit of, hey, go try. And I think a lot of what I've tried to do is simplify my process enough, and even sometimes reverse engineer it and go, okay, well, step 1 takes a while. Step 4 within 24 to 48 hours, you can feel pretty good about yourself. So if I can maybe sprinkle in a little bit of step 4 in a small way early on,
Yeah.
that'll build a little bit of confidence. And then all of a sudden, now it has to be real confidence. Otherwise it's going to be, even worse. But once you develop a little bit of trust, it's almost like a test drive. And that's what I try to teach my clients how to do. Get in front of people, learn, find out what they're not telling you, because they're not just going to come find you. And then if you can create a little bit of value, it's almost like a little test drive. And, everyone who's worked with you, Henry, your clients, former colleagues, they know you, they trust you.
Sure.
But it's everybody else who's never met, either don't know you exist, or may think but they haven't actually experienced that level of trust. And once you can create that, it can be very small, but once you create it, if it's authentic, all of a sudden the guard comes down, people are a little bit more open, and things can happen.
Sure. And it's the same way, as you're saying, when you're consulting and you're trying to go after a piece of work with a brand new company, just to get the door cracked open so you get in there, let's just have a small conversation first, get over that fear, because there's so much heavy-handed sales going on out there.
Oh, that's another challenge too, is a lot of the copy I've written to get engagement. Always trying to stay ahead of the curve, because right now on LinkedIn, I've probably got about 35 messages in my inbox. I actually save them because I'm thinking about doing an awareness video just to say, hey, all of you salespeople, you've got the same copy. You think it's unique, but I don't know who it's working on, but the other people in charge of businesses, their inbox looks like mine. And, you need to be more personal. You need to do something to stand out, because I came across your profile and, it doesn't work. So being able to see that, and then, maybe a client hasn't come to me and said, I need this, but just noticing that and then going, okay, I need to have a couple options, because actually if my business scales really big and a lot of people are using the same thing, well, even my solution is going to have diminishing returns. So I need to have multiple options so I don't, dilute my own customers' potential.
So let's talk about your career here, and thinking about what you spent your life doing. What defining moment inspired you now to be an executive career accelerator?
Well, I certainly, 10 years ago, I certainly didn't think I'd be doing this. 20 years ago, certainly not. I think the beginning of my career, I was searching for those three things, where it was, I just want to enjoy going to work every day. I want to be around other people who, probably the simplest way I can put it, care as much as I do. It's not just about getting paid. I want to do something that makes an impact. And I'd been rejected so many times. I've been laid off. I had gone for promotions. I would get bored very easily. And so, you hear people say enough times to you, well, you don't have this degree, or you don't have this MBA, or you don't have enough years of experience, or never been in this particular industry. You've never done this. Just all these things that I don't have. And, deep down, that's what prompted me to job hop, to go find stuff, to go back to school, to do all these things. And it was my first year of my MBA. 110 classmates, everybody's competing for the same, 5 companies that are on campus with armies of recruiters. We're all going for the same prestigious consulting internships. And it just kind of dawned on me. And it was like, you know what, no matter what I do, there are hundreds, if not thousands, if not tens of thousands of other people who paid for the same thing, who have the same acronym to the right of their name, who have the same years of experience. If I continue to compete the same way through the same channels with the same process and strategy and resources and execution as all these other people, it's almost like playing the lottery. Mm-hmm. And I'm no smarter than anybody, but I'll outwork a lot of people. And I'm no better than anybody, but I'm pretty doggone persistent and creative. And it may take me 10 times longer, but I don't quit. And that caring and work ethic, I can solve a lot of problems. I'm a good self-starter. So, first startup I failed, then went through this journey and going back to school. And I just got so frustrated with job boards and recruiters and the way all the obstacles just to sit down with someone like yourself
Mhm.
and be able to talk about an actual business and all these other things, keywords, and all these things that none of the really smart, accomplished people I've talked to are sitting there go, you know what? The reason we grew from $1 million to a $10 million company was because each of us had 5 keywords on our resume. That changed the trajectory of this entire industry. And I guess I would just say that right place, right time, enough frustration that finally for me, I found a problem that was so compelling to me that I was willing to try to go solve it without anybody paying me for it.
Mhm.
And I didn't get paid for a couple years. And then I developed enough knowledge, and it was almost just a little bit lucky, but this knowledge paired with a couple other events that happened, that all of a sudden I connected the dots and said, you know what, I've got some unique, if I can teach business leaders how to think more like entrepreneurs, then who they are and what they want to showcase to people, if I can give them a way to actually let people experience that, then I've solved the problem I wanted to solve my whole life. And if I can teach a few other people how to do that, then at the end of the day, if I'm helping difference makers who want to be great meet and create value for other difference makers who want to be great, then I'm helping some people's dreams come true. I'm helping people be excited to live their life and make a difference. And I'm helping a few companies get better. And if I can do that, man, to me, that's the idealistic world I always wanted to live in. So I'm doing my small part to make it a reality.
Well, that's very good, because basically, with the way the business environment is growing today, there really is the emphasis on all these executives to be more entrepreneurial and dealing with disruption and innovation. You got to have that mindset, otherwise you're going to get left in the dust over the next few years.
I would agree. And it's so interesting because everything you said is true. And then there's like the surface, the words, organizations. We want entrepreneurial thinkers. We want people, but then at the same time, I think a lot of those organizations don't actually know how to identify
Right.
that entrepreneurial skill set. And in fact, in many cases, they punish it without even really knowing it. So it's kind of this interesting, I would say that in some ways, and I don't want to overstate it, but in some ways, I feel like I'm teaching my clients how to help hiring managers and organizations improve their own hiring process without explicitly going to telling them I'm just going to re-engineer this process for you without you even knowing it. And that'll allow me to stand out, and it'll allow you to hire a better candidate.
Yeah. Okay, great. So let's now reflect upon your entire life. Could you share an experience you had growing up, or even through your early college years, that still influences how you approach business today?
Man, that's a great question, Henry. I've had a lot of experiences. On probably only a handful of them are coming to mind right now, but middle school, high school, probably from a coaching standpoint, I played football. I was an athlete, and I remember one time when I was very, very young, I did this tackling drill against a kid who he had hit his growth spurt, like a decade before I would hit mine. And so this guy was like 2 times bigger than me. And I was terrified of him. And we did a tackling drill. And I remember my coaches, telling, here's how you go do it. Here's what but I was still terrified. And I went and he hit me, and I think I must have flown back about 8 feet and landed on my back, but it didn't hurt. And that gave me some confidence. And then throughout that sport, whether I was learning, how to play quarterback or how to play defense, just coaches, pushing me, challenging me, not being easy on me, but at the same time, there's a fine line between pushing somebody and when they care about you, and then seeing the product of that, and then becoming a leader on some of these sports teams. And it's a challenge, but I think that a vivid experience slash memory that I feel is just being in a huddle and looking at 10 other teammates and saying, here's the play we're going to call. You go execute, you do your job. If you do your job, trust me to do my job, and then sprinkle in a little bit of, and let's go push them back, you know? And then that feeling of a team, that feeling of everybody believing in themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and then the tactical standpoint of it to say, okay, here's what we got to go do. We know how to do it. We've practiced it. Let's go execute it. And then seeing it pay off. Probably sometimes I'm a little bit I'm very passionate and I'm very candid, but there's probably still a part of sports that comes out, and in my own little way, I try to sprinkle it in, whether it's the group coaching calls or just the mindset. I don't spend a lot of time thinking about fear and failure. I spend more time going, what's the worst thing that can happen is I'm going to get hit. I'm going to fly back 8 feet. I'm going to hit the ground, and then I'm going to inhale. I'm going to open my eyes, and I'm going to get up, and I'm going to be better for it. So what's there to be afraid of?
Sure. Okay, so what you're talking about brings to mind, to me, just the different stages of team formation, like storming, forming, norming, storming type of thing. So when you're talking with your group clients now, how much together are they, do you think, as a team, or are they just a bunch of individuals that are coming to your sessions?
No, there's this, everybody wants personalized support. I mean, especially when you want to get into coaching. So the first step for me is to I have to kind of tell them, hey, I do group coaching. One, it's less expensive for you. Two, it's more fun for me. It's more scalable for me, but it's going to be as personalized as you want it. But I want you to know that you're not alone. I want you to be pushed when you see somebody who's doing something you didn't think would work, instead of just taking my word for it. And that forms some accountability. And I think that maybe coming into it, some people are a little bit nervous about that. They're wondering if they're going to get a very personalized experience. But it's so fascinating because that first call that they're on, when they hear other people, they might just sit and listen for an hour and a half. And then all of a sudden the light bulb goes off. And I think to be a part of something where you're not alone, where you're plugged into people who are also thinking big, who refuse to settle, who want to be great. And then just to be able to hear and learn quicker, but then also just be able to hear from multiple people. I just think it builds trust, and it actually, experiment that I did. I'm so passionate about coaching. I would spend about 10 hours a week, and I started to realize this may be not as scalable, or maybe I want to create a tier that's maybe more premium. I'm going to cut it down to 5 hours a week. And I was nervous about that because in my mind, I don't want people to be upset about that. It actually elevated the quality because now that time becomes more exclusive. And so in the past, people may have shortcutted the instructions, and I'm spending more time with one person who's kind of bringing everybody down. Well, now the expectation when you get on that call is, hey, if you didn't leverage the 85 hours of resources that are there, we're not going to spend much time on you because this is about graduate level. And so it elevates the quality for everybody. And it also builds this kind of confidence. It's a safe place. I try to create a family environment where it does feel kind of like a team. And fortunately, hopefully one day this will happen, and I'm not quite sure how I'll do it, but I haven't had two direct competitors going at each other. But even then I would try to create and say, hey, it's whoever creates the most value, that's who should get the opportunity. Anyway, it's interesting. There's something to this model that can be applied in lots of other aspects, other applications.
All right. So let's focus in again about the company. What are your top 3 process or business capability challenges or concerns?
Oof. Well, I have a smaller company, all right? So I don't have, 30 people. One known challenge for me is, it's a time challenge, and an expertise challenge. I think eventually I'd figure it out, but I've made enough mistakes now to the point where I know that, I need a team. I need other people. I got to trust them, but I need other people. So the education / marketing challenge. It's being able to differentiate and educate and funnel people. I think that's my biggest business challenge right now. And a lot of that can be automated. Certainly it can be measured. And then of course it can be optimized. And I would say that I'm at a very early stage in that. 5 years into a business, maybe somebody else that would have been their number one priority. For me, my priority was making sure I can deliver results and then building a scalable education program to do it. I feel like with where my business is today, the service delivery and the scalability of that platform, what I'm now trying to do is make sure that my marketing and my customer acquisition, that it's actually creating enough demand to feed the engine that I've spent 3 years optimizing. So marketing processes, whether it be email marketing, webinars, podcasts, just organizing all that content, trying to create efficiencies to where I'm not having redundant, processes, create one piece, maybe be able to reuse it. I think that's priority number one by a mile, and will continue to be so. I think the next evolution is just to try to begin utilizing technology to be able to elevate the education experience. We track activity, but it's at its infant stages. So to be able to track that, make recommendations, automate development, be able to promote engagement, I think that's the next level. Everything that's human is performing at a high level, but there needs to be more humans to be able to develop some of the technology.
Sure. So at what point would you need a Kyle clone as your business expands?
I don't know if Kyle could handle Kyle. So I need, but to your point, and right now, it's, and again, I think I need somebody who thinks differently than me, but shares the same values. And really can already has a proven ability from a marketing standpoint to create traffic, to build trust, to build funnels, whereas I'm more experimenting and learning best practices, and obviously of course that keeps me from doing other aspects of the business. So that would be if I could, not a clone, but a better Kyle B, I guess, who specializes in, who's spent 5 years focusing on marketing instead of focusing on service.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking more in terms of, your interactions with people in the coaching. There's going to be a point where the demand exceeds your capability to get all the work done. So you would need
so this is an area that has evolved over time. I think at one point I was thinking, what can I do to potentially bring in others to teach various aspects of this? The way I tried to solve that was a challenge in the sense that everyone with the resume writing certification and the LinkedIn optimization certification and the career coach certification, they're all essentially taught what I consider to be the wrong way, the mainstream way, the non-differentiated way. So I've actually found that many clients, because they've gone through the process and learned it, and then of course they bring their own business perspective that I don't have. Some of those people potentially could teach it, but what I've also tried to do, considering maybe a certification program to teach people how to teach the Meet Your Gig approach.
Sure.
But also I think growing out the educational content to make it even a little bit more specific, and getting to a format where it's more, thousands of people could get the general SOP, but then have more like, I guess the closest way I can put it would be like a few times a week, a live, almost like a radio show for clients. And that would be a little bit less personalized, but it would be consistent in the sense that, I would be able to host it. And certainly I think I've actually had other clients who, have built presentations, or who can come back and they can teach certain aspects of it. So, and some of them volunteer to do it, which is pretty cool. So, somewhere in there would there's multiple ways that could go.
Sure. Okay. All right. So let's kind of focus back now on your customers. What's the most important question your customers should be asking when they consider Meet Your Gig?
Multiple angles. I would say, am I looking for a job or am I looking for empowerment? I mean, I think that's a mindset. That's an attitude. If they're looking for a job, then they save their money, and we're not the best fit for them, and that's okay. We know our customer, so if they're looking for something more than a paycheck, that's the first question. Whatever the answer is to that, either not a good fit, or let's begin the education process to show you how we can make it happen, how you can make it happen for yourself, actually.
Okay. And then kind of from a slightly different perspective, what's the most important thing your customers should consider when evaluating Meet Your Gig against your competition?
Results. I've tried to accumulate as much evidence as possible, whether it's, okay, here's an actual Meet Your Gig resume portfolio. I mean, this is 1/10 of what we teach, but you can take this and go visually compare it to anything else you see. If you see something that's anywhere close, you've got somebody else to consider. But that's at least a visual aid, which is probably the one thing I can do to be able to showcase quality, and then say, okay, well, you can't achieve this quality if you send what you have out to somebody and have them go tailor it. Like you have to build this. And then the second thing would just be, hey, go listen to some real people. Anybody can create numbers. Half the stuff we see today probably isn't even authentic, but people don't read deep. But for the type of people that I work with, they tend to be, intelligent, people who conduct due diligence, people who want some data, want some evidence of some kind. And so I try to have accumulated about 15 hours of recorded success stories that, not 2-minute marketing pieces. This system's a miracle, and I pressed a button and everything changed. But actually get to hear somebody's challenges, their story, and what they accomplished. And hopefully you hear it from enough people. There's enough evidence to where if you want evidence, then there is no competition. But in today's, what can I tell you that you want to hear to make you feel good, and then create the easiest, quickest, magical solution? That's how I perceive my competition. I'm looking for somebody who many people market what I market. When you dive down deep, it's still just a, cheap resume and basic mainstream methods. I want to come across somebody who teaches a lot of what I teach, because that, for me, that would be Kyle B.
Yeah.
And that let's go partner, because this would be so much easier with somebody who wants to grow the same thing, instead of, trying to compete with, I don't want to say anything that comes off as conceited, but
Look, that's okay. Yeah. All right. So after 7.5 years with Meet Your Gig, if you had to start everything all over from scratch now, what would you do different, and what would you continue to do the same?
wow. Well, the same part would be the same emphasis on education and service. I mean, I grew up in customer service. That's been ingrained in me from my dad, my mom, to working in hospitality. I think that's the glue. I mean, that you can't simulate caring and problem solving. So the service standard, that would stay the same. I have spent far too much time trying to create my own shortcut in terms of this education process. I think I probably at least at least a year or two of guaranteed growth trajectory revenue that I experimented and walked away from to try to find something that's more scalable. And in some respects, I was able to achieve the solution I have is more scalable now.
Okay.
But if I could go back and do it over again, I would listen to my dad, who's probably said this 50 times, and certainly other people who've tried to help me along the way, and say, quit trying to optimize your service. Just keep getting traffic to your website. And I am a perfectionist. I've actually learned that you don't have to put out if you put out something that's educational, it may not even be the best quality. People will go for it, but there's always still this part inside me that's like, it can be better. And I waste so much time focusing on better inside my head, when the truth is everybody else out there could care less about that particular better. So really focusing on the marketing, A/B testing emails, doing that from the beginning, A/B testing this source, this channel, really prioritizing I used to hear commercials and go, gosh, I'm so sick of hearing that commercial. I'm so sick of this. Now I'm realizing, you know what, even if you're sick of it, at least if I'm sick of it, it means that I'm aware of it.
Yeah,
And I need to be creating awareness constantly. So yeah, maybe somebody smarter would have learned that, 6 years ago, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago. But for me, I've had to learn the hard way, reinforce it, and I won't make the mistake again.
Well, Kyle, we could keep talking, but I think we've overextended a bit here, but run out of time. So how can people get in touch with you to learn more?
Yeah, I would say I invite anyone to follow me on LinkedIn, connect with me. Just search Kyle Gantos. It's /IN/Kyle Gantos, or visit meetyourgig.com. And just a couple quick overview videos, learn for yourself the logic. A lot of it you can apply on your own. And then if you'd like to chat, I'd be happy to spend some time with you. So LinkedIn and then meetyourgig.com.
Okay, great. So Kyle, I've really enjoyed talking to you this evening. This has been a great conversation. And I know we could just go on and on and on, but I want to honor your time. So thank you so much for your time today.
Hey, thank you for doing what you do. I've watched some of your other guests, and educational, lots of good reinforcement, also lots of just considering new opportunities to grow, and appreciate the value you're providing, and good to catch up with you as well, Henry.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Business Performance Podcast with your business coach, Henry Schneider. For more episodes and business strategies, please visit welcome.ppqc.net/blog. That's www.welcome.ppqc.net/blog. And remember to subscribe so you can get the latest episodes. Thank you.